One Piece, episode 1151. Chaos erupting across the Marine fleet. After being hurled away by Workery, the Iron Giant instantly turned into a nightmare for the surrounding ships. None of the Marines had the slightest clue what this ancient machine was, and all they could do was panic as the metal titan threatened to drag their vessels under. It plunged straight into the water, pulling nearby ships down with it, and the Den Mushi embedded inside shut off like it had fainted. Vegapunk's pre-recorded message resumed for a brief moment. He seemed ready to reveal a crucial name, possibly someone tied to the mysterious D. Many fans immediately thought of Nefertari D. Lily. Now fully submerged, the Iron Giant began muttering, as if searching for someone. It kept asking where Joy Boy was, repeating the question even as it sank deeper. And honestly, it makes you wonder, were these questions meant for the present? Or were they memories echoing from 900 years ago? Joy Boy had a destiny he couldn't fulfill, like helping the fishmen, and Imu still keeps that giant straw hat, likely his. The robot clearly expected their paths to cross again. It felt Joy Boy's presence nearby, yet everything happening made no sense to it. Imagine waking up after 200 years, only to get blasted straight into the ocean seconds later. Meanwhile, the remaining Marine forces were still dealing with the monstrous boar. Just catching sight of the Gorosei was supposed to be taboo, but at this point, they had no choice, and the warrior god of justice looked far from pleased Vegapunk's livestream, then cut out entirely. Viewers everywhere were left in suspense, confused about what stopped the broadcast mid-sentence. People began fearing the worst, wondering if Vegapunk had been silenced because of the heavy truths he was revealing. In Alabasta, the citizens refused to believe that the world government would eliminate the greatest scientist of the age. Ironically, that is exactly what the government did to their king. And yet, Luffy is now being framed as the one who supposedly kidnapped Vegapunk. Meanwhile, the guy has done nothing but try to save him, and he saved Alabasta years ago. We cut to a king that isn't immediately recognizable. The chef beside him insisted that the world government would never execute a mind as brilliant as Vegapunk's, even if he had broken a few rules. It really shows how much trust, or blind faith, the government has cultivated. Leo, of course, believed what he heard instantly, while Rebecca was clearly annoyed at his gullible reaction. Back on Egghead, York received a call from the Gorosei. Even though she idolized them and feared them, the way she answered was surprisingly casual. They asked how many of the Vegapunks were still alive besides her. York checked punk records to see whose signals remained. She detected only two: Vegapunk Lilith, the number 2 body, and Vegapunk Atlas, number 5. But this system was flawed. Stella and Edison were disconnected, yet still alive. Still, York reported what she saw. Lilith was on the Labo phase, and Atlas was at the northeastern shore. The Gorosei immediately agreed to erase the remaining versions. From Mars's perspective, Punk Records was designed to keep updating and evolving even after Stella's death, and thanks to York, they could now claim that knowledge for themselves. To them, the rest of the Vegapunks were nothing more than unpredictable loose threads. This entire event almost feels like a three-way division of spoils. Dory, Brogy, and Luffy cheerfully leaped aboard the Elbaf ship. Bonnie finally called Luffy by his actual name instead of Straw Hat, which even he seemed surprised by. Frankie and Sanji admired the enormous ship, while Luffy started wondering where the rest of his crew ended up. 2 young vice admirals rallied their forces, yelling at their marines not to let the Straw Hats escape when they had so many warships available, but sheer numbers didn't matter, and the giant's strength was overwhelming. Marines panicked, worried that their commanding officers wouldn't survive after what they had just witnessed. Vice Admiral Dahl, Vice Admiral Bluegrass, and even the mechanical sea beast weapon had all been transformed into tiny children. Bluegrass hated being stuck in such a cute form, but even she had to admit that Bonnie's power was unbelievably frightening. Even with its drawbacks, the Toshi no Mi remains one of the most versatile abilities in the series. Bonnie herself is still only 12, and we clearly haven't witnessed the full range of what this age-bending power can do. Though that's about to change. While gripping a pistol, she taunted the Marine officers chasing her, fully aware of the punishment they'd face for letting her slip away. And honestly, if even Nustro couldn't take her down, no ordinary Marine is going to manage it. Kashi was hauled back onto the Elbaf ship after getting worked over by Vice Admiral Dal Oimo, was thrilled to see yet another of their giant brothers, and the reunion brightened the mood on deck. Sanji updated Nami through the transponder snail, telling her that their group had already set off. She assured him they'd follow right behind. Edison's guidance systems would get them to the water safely, though with Nusjuro rising into view, Nami suspected they might need a bit of help with the landing Danji. Fired up as ever, promised he'd protect Nami, Robin, and Lilith above all else. He even vowed that he'd dive in and pull them out personally if their vessel went under, a comment that irritated Usopp to no end, since everyone except him seemed to be the priority. Frankie stepped in, assuring them he'd keep the ship intact, which only made Usopp grumble louder. Suddenly, something blasted toward the giant's vessel, the Itzamade-like form of St. Marcus Mars. Sanji clenched his jaw as the elder approached, and Bonnie immediately snapped to attention. This was the third monstrous elder she had faced with her own eyes. Meanwhile, Luffy was already bonding with the giant's chef. The cook had been warned about Luffy's unstoppable appetite and had prepared mountains of food ahead of time. Only to watch it all vanish in seconds, Luffy apologized, explaining he needed the calories to crank up Gear 5 again and told the chef to cook more later. The giant burst into laughter at how casually he said it. Mars unleashed a devastating flame beam. The giants leapt into action, forming a fiery shield to protect the smaller crew members, but even so, the blaze spread outward and threatened to reach their sails. The two shield-bearing warriors were introduced as Bjorn and Sig, names drawn from Norse legend: Bjorn Ironside, a famed Viking leader, and Sigyn, Loki's steadfast wife. Whether Sig has any connection to Loki's lineage remains to be seen, though I doubt it. The Marines below were baffled to see a massive flaming bird seemingly on their side. Danji thanked the burning giants for their protection, while Bonnie urged the group to get Stella and Kuma's body out of danger. Immediately, Atlas volunteered to carry them. Dory and Brogy groaned as yet another monstrous elder joined the fight. The frustrating part was that they couldn't simply run. This one had wings and could pursue them endlessly. Mars felt the same irritation and announced that none of the pirates would be escaping today. That's when Frankie noticed something strange. The ocean itself began pulsing as if bouncing to a rhythm. Marines panicked, thinking another earthquake was erupting. Luffy, meanwhile, was delighted, since the timing lined up perfectly with his now full stomach. As the sea continued trembling like a giant trampoline, Marines wondered whether Vegapunk's warnings about rising water levels were actually coming true, but Mars realized what the phenomenon was and shifted his focus. Luffy spotted Bonnie and shouted happily to her. Shocked, she exclaimed, "Nika!" once again. Though Luffy still had no clue what she meant, Bonnie had gone through so many names for him at this point that even she looked confused. Dory and Brogy, on the other hand, were dancing joyfully to the drums of liberation. Though Brogy reminded Dory that one of them needed to stop celebrating long enough to handle the spreading fire, Luffy invited Bonnie to come help him clean up the troublemakers. She doubted she could keep pace with him, but Luffy, even without understanding her devil fruit, believed she could. Hearing that confidence, she remembered what he told her earlier. This form is what he looks like when he's completely free. With that in mind, Bonnie unleashed the power of a distorted future. While Kuma's real body remained motionless, we were shown the memory of the promise he once made to Ginny. Bonnie's chosen future was clear, one where she is finally free, and, suddenly, there were two Nikas, two sets of drums, two liberators, and Luffy couldn't be happier. Honestly, neither could I. The Marines had no clue what they were witnessing. Even Mars lost his usual confidence as Luffy prepared to take on yet another elder. At this point, the only one he hasn't thrown hands with is Nusjuro Bonnie, geared up for battle beside him. Elsewhere, the drums of liberation were producing an effect that Warkery and Jupiter clearly despised. Something was off, dangerously off, and they urgently needed to move. It's worth remembering the Iron Giant's rampage 2 centuries ago wasn't actually defeated, it simply powered down mid-battle. But now that Joy Boy's presence has returned, that ancient fight is resuming where it left off. We begin with Kaku shouting at Stussy to get out. With his back turned, he asked if she really didn't expect this reaction from him. Any idea of them being friends was laughable to him. Even so, he admitted he once held a certain professional respect for her, because she had always been the kind of agent who wouldn't hesitate to make the hard call. But he knew one thing for sure: nothing in the world would ever make Rob Lucci forgive her betrayal. Stussy tried to speak through her tears, but Kaku cut her off again, louder this time, telling her to just leave. Once she was finally gone, he struggled to keep his real emotions from spilling out. Earlier, we saw that her mention of friendship had genuinely shaken him. Kaku understands perfectly well how merciless Lucci can be, so pushing her away was the safest choice. In moments like these, it becomes clear that even the Cypher Paul assassins still have hearts beneath all that training. Meanwhile, on Egghead's northeastern shore, Bonnie was marveling at her newly achieved Nika-like form. Luffy was laughing uncontrollably, his joy almost sinking with the rhythmic liberation drums echoing around them. Because of this form, the Marines instantly recognized him. He looked exactly like the image on his current bounty poster. The Elbaf giants were ecstatic to finally witness the fabled warrior of liberation with their own eyes. St. Mars let out a displeased grunt as he noticed the presence of two Nikas. It didn't take him long to realize Bonnie was copying the divine form thanks to her devil fruit abilities. Wasting no time, the Elder fired off a vicious beam attack to put them in their place. Luffy told the others that no matter what they tried, attacks wouldn't do a thing to this creature. He'd seen monsters like it sliced, smashed, and crushed without feeling a scratch. Luffy inflated into a massive balloon and absorbed the full force of the Itsumaru's blast. The attack clearly hurt, but he had a plan. He wanted everyone to throw him at the Elder with everything they had. Sanji and Frankie agreed instantly. No hesitation at all. Frankie even seemed pumped about the idea. Bonnie, on the other hand, looked completely stunned by their reckless strategy. Hearing this, Dory told the Straw Hats that they would personally deal with the giant bird-like creature. Brogy scolded their fellow giants, telling them to quit dancing around like fools and get the fire out so their ship could move again. The other giants were taken aback since their captains were literally dancing along to the drums of liberation moments ago. The way Elbaf worships Nika honestly feels like Japan's obsession with Sentai heroes. Luffy looked absolutely unhinged when he grabbed the Elder's wings, shouting at his crew to hurry up while he still had the beast restrained. As the trio prepared their combined attack, Sanji reminded Bonnie that the captain's orders are absolute, ironically hilarious coming from one of the least obedient crews ever assembled. All three prepared special attacks just for this moment, and despite being new, they weren't holding back at all. Bonnie even had her own partially coated spin on Luffy's elephant gun. The trio slammed their strikes into Luffy's exposed back, making him shriek in agony. Bonnie's jaw dropped. She truly didn't expect their blows to actually hurt him. Luffy kept on screaming as the force built up. Even St. Mars felt the shockwave on the opposite side of the battlefield. Luffy yelled that their attacks definitely hurt because they were coated with haki. Something very interesting. Out of the trio, Sanji was the only confirmed haki user until now. Bonnie clearly has it too based on her fist's appearance, but that raises the big question. Does Frankie finally have armament haki as well? I'm really hoping so. Sanji yelled at Bonnie not to hold back, while Frankie told her to keep hitting until the soul was crushed out of him. Bonnie wondered what was wrong with these lunatics. You'd think they were settling a personal grudge with their own captain? Still, Luffy kept bracing himself against the barrage of attacks, which was already impressive, given their strength. A massive bead of sweat slid down St. Mars's beak once he sensed the pressure rising. With one explosive dawn balloon, Luffy launched the Elder out of sight like a Team Rocket send-off. He was pretty satisfied with the result and doubted the creature would be returning anytime soon. With that problem handled, it was time for them to escape. But Luffy grew concerned about the rest of their friends. Sanji said the others were supposed to be heading down toward them, but must have been delayed. Atlas immediately volunteered to go check, surprising Sanji. She knew York was watching them closely. As she rocketed upward, she quietly hoped they wouldn't lose any more Vegapunks after everything that's happened. Deep underwater, inside the sunken iron giant, the pre-recorded message from Dr. Vegapunk picked up again. The Den transponder looked like it had just woken up from a wild night out. Vegapunk uttered the word nothing, followed by fragments like of the sorts and that's why. We're receiving the message, piece by piece. Far away on Whole Cake Island, the many siblings were shocked to see the broadcast resume out of nowhere. Even though Pudding has been kidnapped by Blackbeard and Big Mom is missing, none of them would dare miss what might be the most important broadcast of the entire era. Everyone was confused about Vegapunk's remark regarding a will that continuously passes from one generation to the next. It became obvious that we had missed a crucial piece of information tied to the will of D. Vivi, and Morgans were stunned when the transmission suddenly resumed. Some people assumed the interruption must have been caused by a bad signal. York contacted the Gorosei to explain that the broadcast hadn't actually been cut, only paused. The Den transponder's memory core was still intact. If they wanted the message gone for good, they'd have to physically eliminate the device. Vegapunk could only hope that his words would reach those who had suffered under the weight of this inherited will. Unfortunately, nobody managed to hear that missed segment. Meanwhile, somewhere far from civilization, Gaiman was enjoying a carefree life off-grid with his post-time skip sweetheart Sarfunkel. Back near Luffy, the Straw Hat captain was stunned by what he saw above him. Debris kept raining down, confusing everyone at first, but it didn't take long for the Marines to realize this wasn't rain. It was chunks of buildings and Cypher Paul agents plummeting from the sky. They hurried to catch them before the agents hit the ground. Even the Seraphim were retrieved during the chaos. Luffy shouted that the giant worm-like creature was spitting everything out like a fountain. Dory grew uneasy, warning that if the monster turned its attention toward them, they needed to get moving immediately. His concern was validated in an instant when Jupiter shifted focus. The massive creature began trying to swallow the ancient Elbaf ship whole, undoing every bit of progress they had made escaping. Ready for action, Luffy struck the creature with an enormous punch. His giant-sized fans roared with excitement at his display. Vice Admiral Dahl and the other nearby Marines, however, were far from impressed. This situation had reached a level of absurdity. Even they struggled to comprehend. Then the massive boar elder began to snort violently. St. Workery barreled past both Luffy and Jupiter, charging directly toward the ship. Luffy yelled that the boar's hide was extremely tough, while Dory and Brogy urgently ordered their crew to get the vessel moving. They knew all too well how dangerous the elder beast was. The elder launched himself over the sea, completely prepared to slam into the ship. Although how he planned to recover afterward, considering the sea nullifies devil fruits, was anyone's guess. Bonnie, exhausted from sustaining the Nika-like freedom form, couldn't assist. The transformation drains its user heavily. Luffy himself shrivels up like a dried apricot when his power ends. Suddenly, Luffy reacted to a sensation coming from deep below. At the same moment, Dory and Brogy screamed in terror for their ship's safety. Then, emerging from the waves with colossal force, came the Iron Giant. The enormous automaton smashed straight into the Boar Elder, shattering one of its massive tusks. And then, echoing from somewhere within that machine, came a voice from the distant past, Joy Boy himself. In that ancient memory, Joy Boy told the Iron Giant, Emeth, that the moment they'd been waiting for had arrived. Workery was knocked back toward the island. Emeth, however, questioned what Joy Boy truly meant by this moment. Dory and Brogy's eyes practically escaped their skulls as they tried to make sense of the overwhelming machine standing before them. Luffy, on the other hand, was overwhelmed with pure joy. His eyes sparkled like constellations as tears streamed down. He was thrilled beyond words to finally witness the giant robot awaken in full glory.